Hello and welcome to week 37's gameplay episode. I am, as you can tell, back with my good mic. Apologies for the audio quality on the last episode. But yeah, we should have much better audio quality on this one. And I can introduce, actually talking of audio quality, you got COVID, Josh, so it might sound a bit different, but yeah, good to have you on despite that.
Yeah, the 2020s called. They wanted their disease back. I've managed to contract COVID. So, I am using the same mic, but far more nasally this week than than usual. But yeah, it's good to be here and chat about gameplay.
Yeah, and actually, we just come off the back of recording this week's supporter episode, which was content episode, and our next guest was on that one too. Always good to have him on, although it has been a while. It's DJ. Hello.
Hi, Ben. Another bank holiday, another pod appearance.
Yeah, for those wondering, why DJ appears every now and again, that is why. And finally, someone who is pretty familiar around these parts at this point, one of the key people behind the guide, it is TaZz. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me one more time this year in FC25.
Make it sound like this is going to be your last one for this cycle.
I don't know. It's up to you, I think, or like when it comes to good topics to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, you'll be back. But on this episode, we are going to do some gameplay advice. We're also going to talk a bit about, what we'd like to see change for 26, because we're reaching that time of year. But I wanted to start off by asking an interesting question, which is, what is the most valuable chemistry style at the moment? Because before the podcast, Josh, you were pointing out that the prices of chemistry styles that you wouldn't expect are kind of through the roof. So if you want easy coins, check your clubs for tradable chemistry styles. And maybe we'll talk a bit about chemistry styles just more generally. But yeah, do you want to highlight a couple of the key takeaways there? At least at the moment, at the time of recording, I guess things could change.
It's more the kind of secondary chemistry styles. So Hawk, Engine, and Anchor that have just gone absolutely bananas. Hawk is selling for like 3.7k on console right now. Anchor's in the fours. Engines like high twos, and then Shadows, which were down at kind of 800, 700 coins at one point. I know some people stocked up with thousands of them and they never moved. Well, they finally have, so I hope you didn't sell them early. They're almost 3k now. And like even some of the non-rare chemistry styles, so like Marksman and Finisher, especially the attacking ones, they're going for like not 200 coins, like they're going for 500 plus. In fact, there was a point I think where Marksman was going for like 1100 coins. And I don't want to say that it's GG Rating that's doing that, but Marksman is a very popular chemistry style on GG Rating because it makes players controlled lengthy and gives them good stats. So, as in, it doesn't specifically make them control lengthy, but because it boosts their physicality, it tends to give them like a nudge in the direction of lengthiness, which if a player is base controlled can make them controlled lengthy, which increases their GG rating because that's the best accelerate type.
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, I guess it's that thing of players being max pace now quite often just really means that people find use for those non-pace boosting chemistry styles. Another thing I wanted to highlight actually is all the GG ratings on foot.gg are with chemistry styles, right? But what's quite interesting is quite how big a boost a chemistry style can give. And I have long said that, maybe not this time of the cycle, but for a lot of the cycle, a shadow is the most undervalued item in the entire game. Like the boost that it gives a player like far exceeds its value. And I think there are certain players that you look at with the example of Shadow where you'll see that if you apply an irrelevant chemistry style to them and then apply a Shadow, the difference is like, sometimes like 3 GG rating, right? That's like a huge increase. And I think it is something that is important to state. And actually, the other thing is, Josh, a lot of people don't believe in chemistry styles, but you actually did some testing with NEP, right? And it is the case that at least the ones you tested were having an impact.
Yeah, so when we got those kind of special replays that gave you stats, like when the XG popped up and stuff after you'd scored a goal, one of them, after you scored a power shot, gave you the shot speed that you'd hit. And so we kind of had a realization that if you could increase the shot speed or the shot power on a card, can you increase the shot speed? Can you see a noticeable difference? And the same then with like the playstyle with power shot as a playstyle. And so we did a big test where we essentially got players with like 60, 70, 80, 90 and 99 shot power and measured their shot speed for 10 different shots. And there's a clear noticeable bump from each of those values. So then what we did was to take a player with 80 shot power, give them a chemistry style that gave them, I think it was 92 shot power, and there was a very noticeable bump, kind of matching the values we'd got with players that just had base 80 and 90 shot power. Yeah, chemistry styles definitely work, and I think that Accelerate is maybe where you can see it the easiest in the current version of the game. Like, give a player a chemistry style that makes them some form of explosive, and like if you've got a control player that can do this, and then give them a chemistry style that makes them some form of lengthy, and it is night and day, the difference between their Accelerate styles. Like, you can really visibly feel it and see it on the pitch.
Yeah, well, it might actually be worth us just quickly explaining Accelerate. We talk a lot about players being lengthy, controlled lengthy, etc. And I think the thing to think about is it basically changes the acceleration curve of the player. And while both an explosive player and a lengthy player would reach their top speed at the same point, a lengthy player will reach a kind of near top speed quicker, whereas an explosive player will start faster, but then kind of plateau or kind of not increase so fast towards their top speed towards the end. So when you're running in behind with a lengthy player, it's really noticeable that they're better because you're running a longer distance, and so they're reaching that kind of higher end of their acceleration curve quicker. And that's why the more explosive players are quite nice for dribbling with over short distances, because they reach a decent speed much faster than a lengthy player. But then you throw into the mix things like quick step and of course rapid, and that changes things. And I think what's quite noticeable to me is if you use a player who has quick step plus, who's also lengthy to some extent, that really compensates for that slow start that they have. And so those players feel really, really quick. And also rapid as well. You know, that keeps a player going on the ball very quickly. I think it helps a lot with explosive players, but it also helps with lengthy players too. So hopefully that sort of explains it. And actually, maybe we ask DJ, is there something that you've been looking at this cycle?
I ignored it. I was too focused on the stats, and it's actually, again, with the rating system coming in and the weighting you guys put on the FUTGG rating in terms of different accelerate types, I was more conscious of it this week in particular. I knew it existed, but I mentioned on the content pod about a centre-back I evoed, and him having all of the stats and being mostly lengthy made it quite obvious how quick he was in defence and what came from that. So I would say I'm a slow learner on this one, and I've become a lot more conscious of it recently.
You're a mostly explosive learner, you mean?
Yes, now I'm aware I will accelerate quickly in my learning curve.
And what about you, Taz? I know you splashed out because we were chatting about it maybe on a previous podcast on that Centurions R9, and he's one of those players that can be, if you apply the right chemistry style, lengthy or controlled lengthy. Is that something you went for, and do you value it?
Yeah, you mean the Immortals R9, and you're correct. I think this is maybe in terms of the different accelerate types, the only thing that I actually pay attention to if I have the chance to get the attacker to controlled lengthy, because I like, obviously I haven't really recently played any like attacker who is also like mostly lengthy or lengthy in general, but like I feel like controlled lengthy is something that you can get on a lot of attackers, but still still have good dribbling attributes. So for example, like R9 or like the 95, not the glitched Evo version, which can only be controlled. And by the way, this is something which maybe we can discuss, because I also have this kind of 𝘵𝘵 𝗬𝘰𝗵𝗃 with like Quickstep Plus and Rapid Plus, who can only get to controlled. And there was already a discussion about it when the first Evo just was released, that now all of a sudden this _ฤ can only get to lengthy and not controlled lengthy, in contrast to the like normal 𝘵𝗵 _ฤ. And I played this kind of 𝘵𝗵 _ฤ, which can go to controlled lengthy a bit. And now I play this Evo version, and even though he has Quickstep and Rapid Plus, for me, it doesn't feel the same in terms of sprint boost. And the sprint boost of this 𝘵𝗵 _ฤ, the Immortals _ฤ, and also the Immortals R9, the sprint boost of those two players, and also 𝘵𝘰, for example, is insane. And the one for the Evo version of _ฤ doesn't feel the same for me. And I think it comes down in that case to not having this option to go to controlled lengthy. So this is what I mostly pay attention to, because I think in particular the sprint boost with those kind of players, you get some insane animations if you have those players on controlled lengthy, which is somewhat ironic, or like doesn't feel right, that you go for, like, you try to get to controlled lengthy or mostly lengthy, for example, even though you want to do something like a sprint boost, which, if you think about how it's called, and if you think there are accelerate types which are called explosive, which feel like, wow, this sounds OP and this works well together, but in fact, at least from my experience, it's not the case. So, but I feel like since the introduction of so many different accelerate types, it got so complicated to actually like understand the differences and what kind of situations. Like, there's so much coming together with stats, with play stats, with the different situations, that most of the time I don't actually bother with it.
But clearly there is, quite obviously a difference, and that _ฤ example is a really powerful one, because, as you say, he increases from regular quick step to quick step plus. But you're saying because of the change to him being controlled rather than controlled lengthy, that sort of negates any advantage from that, which is quite incredible. We actually had some interesting stuff going on behind the scenes, right, Josh, with GG rating and lengthiness, because we both felt it was something that was important to give a good weighting to in the system. But it was almost a bit too good, perhaps. But I don't know. I think it's been justified.
Yeah, I mean, there were versions of GG rating where that Immortals R9, the best chemistry style would have been an anchor. Because we valued controlled lengthy so highly, and the fact that you could then get to 99 pace and be controlled lengthy and get the physical boost that an anchor would give, compared to something like Marksman, where although it is giving a boost to the dribbling and shooting, it's actually not that high, like that much of a stat boost. So there was some tweaks that were needed. But I mean, what you get with a Marksman, say on that R9, would be 3 reactions, 3 ball control, 1 dribbling, 4 shot power, 8 long shots, 4 penalties, 8 jumping and 8 strength. And that's good, but with an anchor, you get him to that 99 pace, you get the 8 jumping and 8 strength. So you're kind of sacrificing a bit of shot power, long shots and penalties, and like a bit in his 3 highest dribbling stats for 99 pace. So they were always very close, but I think even still, if you look at Ronaldo right now, advanced forward, his best chemistry style is Marksman, but at Poacher, where that ability to just make that run in behind at maximum speed every time is more important, Anchor is still the number 1 chemistry style for him. So, if you've got that Immortals R9, you like to play him on Poacher, stick him on Anchor. You might find you get a bit more out of him,
Yeah.
We've always said attackers are the best defenders,
Anyway, I think that's probably enough chemistry style chat, unless anyone has anything to kind of throw in the ring around chemistry styles they want to mention. I mean, I don't know if people have any kind of favorite underrated chemistry styles. I feel like mine was probably Marksman. I mean, also actually considering the value of being controlled lengthy, if you really need to push the boat out and give your player a massive bump to get them to controlled lengthy, there is always Architect, right? Which what is it, plus 12 to strength, and obviously boost passing as well, which can be quite helpful for certain players if that's something they're struggling in. And obviously, as we've been saying, there are plenty of players with maxed out pace at the moment, so it could be viable.
I would like to shout out 𝗏𝗟𝗃, and I know that it's like people like to feel like they're doing something to their cards, but especially for midfielders, 𝗏𝗟𝗃 gives such a good across the board boost. There are so many cards where people are giving them chemistry styles that like they're not getting enough out of. The thing that I like the most about 𝗏𝗟𝗃 is that it gives a boost to both attacking positioning and defensive awareness, which are two really like very important stats for like where your player is going to position themselves on the pitch. Now it's not massive, it's just a +4 because it's such a wide ranging chemistry style. But I think people often see 𝗏𝗟𝗃 and go, well, you know, you've not given them a chemistry style. It's like, no, 𝗏𝗟𝗃 is a chemistry style. It does a lot of good things. Like, if I told you I could give you a chemistry style that boosts sprint speed, attack positioning, vision, short pass and long pass, their agility, ball control and dribbling, defensive awareness and stand tackle and strength, you'd go, God, yeah, like give me that. And that's what 𝗏𝗟𝗃 does. So, I like don't overlook 𝗏𝗟𝗃 is something I would say, especially when stats are getting as silly high as they are now. You don't need those massive boosts in specific areas.
Yeah, nothing wrong with being basic, of course. And on that, I think we are ready to wrap up our chemistry style chats. We'll take a break here and we'll be back to talk about some more specific gameplay tips in just a second. Hello and welcome back after the break. So we had this message in from 𝗏𝗀92 who said, I found it interesting. The pod mentioned how overpowered low driven has been. I always found low driven to be a broken mechanic all cycle, even without the playstyle. Prior to the playstyle launching, a pro player, Tom Lees, had it down as one of his top 5 tips for players to pick up. I've always been of the opinion the playstyle was created as EA couldn't fix the broken mechanic, making the mechanic more mainstream. He then asked a follow-up question, which I'll come to, but for now, actually, I think it'd be interesting to respond to that point about it being a broken mechanic. I think we talked about it long before the playstyle was introduced as being something that if you're using precision shooting was always quite strong. I think TaZz, you were using it a lot as well, right? Prior to the playstyle introduction.
Not really. Like, I know that.
Oh, you weren't.
Yeah,
I thought you.
Yeah.
Said you were.
No. Like you. Like it's fine. Like I know that you used it a bit because we talked about when the playstyle got introduced. I have had colleagues who also like published tips about it, that this is one of the techniques that you can actually use to score inside the box without the playstyle before the playstyle. But for me, like I never really had it on my radar really to use it. But I understand that it was also already good before the playstyle.
I think the thing that I question here is 𝗏𝗀's use, Josh, of the term broken mechanic prior to the playstyle. Because to me, it never felt like something that was broken, but it was very effective.
Yeah, I think maybe that's just a kind of parlance thing rather than necessarily it being broken. Like it was just very good. It was very effective, but it required skill to execute. You know, as a lot of people have said, they've realized they thought they were driving low shots. How do you say that? They thought they were doing the low drivens, but they actually weren't, and the playstyle has now allowed them to see that that actually you really do just need to tap shoot, or you can't hold on to it at all. It was something I brought up quite a lot, and I think when the playstyle came out, I said these have been good all year. I don't know why it's suddenly something people have latched onto. In terms of it being added as a playstyle, again, it's one of those things where it was an area of the game, it was an action performed in the game that had no playstyle attached to it, really. And so that kind of needs to be fixed, because every action in the game pretty much at this point has a playstyle attached to it. So yeah, it's too much at the moment, in my opinion. I do think we're beginning to get goalkeepers that are beginning to understand how to stop those shots a little bit. Like that David De Gea, I think, is probably one of the better goalkeepers in the game right now, just because he has, I think, footwork, and that allows him to keep out those a little more often. But for those kind of quick passing moves around the box where you kind of fire it into a striker and get a quick shot off, it is just deadly because the keepers don't react well to it. So yeah, it's never been as broken as it is now. That's fair to say. I've definitely come around to that. I think I was championing. God, it's easy for me to talk today. I was championing the fact that it wasn't any more broken than it had been. It is. So yeah, I don't know. It was good beforehand. I think the playstyle's just done that arcadey thing of making it like it should have a like fire coming out of the back of it when they hit it. Do you know what I mean? That's what it really should look like now.
Or maybe almost like a force field that stops the goalkeeper getting to it. Really, I mean, sometimes I'm like, what? Just like dived over it. I guess we haven't spoken to you about this, TaZz, recently. If you could sort of wave a magic wand, would you nerf the low-driven playstyle?
No, I like it, but
but is that a selfish reason?
Maybe, if you talk about like this, maybe if you tune it down slightly, but not really that much, I feel like that would be a good approach. But I think like right now I prefer strikers who have like the finesse shot in the low driven, so I have all the options basically on how to finish, and I still have the spots where I would say I prefer the finesse shot. So I feel like it's more balanced. Like if we talk about broken mechanics, we talk about 𝘵𝑚 shots. Like this is like literally broken.
Oh yeah,
and
fully broken.
Like if this is the benchmark on what we leave unchanged in the games, then like low drivens are fine.
That's a good point. I feel like I don't know. I feel like the effectiveness of 𝘵𝑚's is more to do with goalkeepers having issues with the trajectory, although maybe that's also true with low drivens, I guess, to some extent, maybe. So the other question that Parky asked here is, with that theory in mind, is there any broken/unexpected mechanics in the game the pod feel could or perhaps should be turned into playstyles in the future? So we actually did discuss playstyles at length in a previous podcast. So I'm going to slightly change the question and ask, are there any sort of broken, unexpected mechanics that you have found that you'd be interested in or be willing to share on this podcast for people to try out? We never like to encourage super broken mechanics, but if they're things people will also enjoy, then we should share them. And maybe we'll get onto the playstyle question in a bit. So yeah, let's start with you, TaZz. Is there anything particularly that you think is worth highlighting for people?
I mean, something we already just talked about it as well in a podcast, like an episode here. Like the overhead kicks on corners is something which is just broken also as well. And there is obviously a playstyle which we also talked about you don't actually need, but this comes to mind when we talk about broken, unexpected things which are currently in the game.
Yeah, we won't go back into that in depth because we did cover it quite recently. But yeah, is there anything, Josh, you've been using that you think is worth mentioning?
Yeah, I have done the thing I said I would never do, which is learn player lock. I decided to grow 2 extra fingers, and now I can, click all the buttons in at once and start splitting my mind in 2 and controlling 2 players at the same time. There is a player lock that I think Nep has briefly mentioned, maybe on the pod before, but definitely on stream. That is essentially not really a player lock. So you still click in both the analog sticks. So you'll then see that the kind of marker above your head changes. It kind of like gets a little bit bigger and has a border around it to kind of go, you've locked to this player. I then pass the ball, and essentially what it allows me to do is like a manual 1-2 where I'm running with the player that makes the first pass. So I kind of pass it to the computer, run with the player, and then ask for the pass back from the computer. And especially when you're kind of getting around a defense, if you've got a defender that you want to get around, or if you can see that there's like a gap between, say, a centre back and a fullback that you want to exploit, it's absolutely brilliant for that. And the thing that I found most useful with it as I've like learned to add it into my game is that after you've done it a few times, especially if you've scored from it, what your opponent will start doing is not marking the player you've passed the ball to. They'll start marking the player that you're running with. And if you then just click the 2 sticks in again and end the player lock, you'll then go back to the player that's on the ball, who's now completely unmarked with no pressure, usually about 30 yards out from goal. And if they've got 𝘃𝑚 or finesse shot plus, it's goal most of the time because there's just no pressure on them. So, I'm still not kind of fully natural. It's not in that muscle memory yet. There are still some times where I pass the ball and I start trying to sprint with the player I've passed the ball with rather than the player I'm actually controlling. But in terms of like a gateway into, like, if you're someone who's gone, listen, player lock just sounds way too complicated for me, this is probably the easiest way of player locking that I've kind of learnt in the game so far, because it's a lot easier for your brain to go, okay, I'm just going to control the player I'm currently in control of, than it is to go, okay, I now need to switch who I'm controlling and then move them into position, then call for the pass with a player that I'm not controlling, and just watch what my player who is controlling the ball is doing at the same time. Like, that feels like too much until you've done this a few times, and then you start understanding how people play a lock without like their brains exploding. So it's really, really quite effective, and especially in like early games of champs. I mean, not this weekend, because people were staying in every game of champs this weekend because of the objective, but like rivals in cups as well, you get so many 1-goal rage quits if you've done like a player lock 1-2, because they're like, what the hell has this guy just done? This is a different level and I can't continue playing. Even if someone's like better than you. I've had a few games where I'm like, oh, this guy's going to batter me, and then I'll score a player lock goal and they leave and you're like, oh, cool, I'll take that. So yeah, give it a go. It takes a little while to get used to. Give it a go in squad battles. Maybe not if you're trying to score 45 goals in 90 minutes, because you will mess it up. But it's really quite a powerful tool. And when you start seeing it work in game, the first time you get it to work, you genuinely feel like a pro, and like, get me in that Premier League right now because I'm the best player that's ever played this game.
Nice. What about you, DJ? Have you got anything that you've been using recently that you feel has helped you, get more goals, prevent more goals?
I think I'm just taking more notes. I have used that 𝘃𝑚, and he's certainly effective and is making less muck-ups on those low-driven shots. So definitely worth getting the right keeper to match the meta, because I think different keepers do match different ways you play. And I don't think there's just a straightforward right answer of who's the best keeper. I think it depends on what sort of shots you give up most. Although those 𝘃𝑚s are ridiculous, and the more sooner they fix them, the better. The only weird little thing I've been doing recently is when I feel like I'm not getting any rhythm, I just decide to try and play as many quick passes as I can for a short period, a few times. Lots of first-time passes, and let's just see if that moves him around a bit and see if that creates some different ways of playing or different opportunities. It's definitely when I feel like my sort of usual patterns or my usual ways of playing aren't working. I'll go, right, I'm just going to play lots of quick passes and see what that opens up. And it seemed to be quite effective this weekend, just when I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah, you're really right. I mean, if you have tiki-taka on players, even the base version, you can really just go around opponents if they're not being very concerted, especially if they don't have Intercept Plus, quite easily. So yeah, it's a nice little thing to be doing. One thing I use all the time, and I'm not sure I've mentioned it for a while now, and I do think it's not broken, but it's really good, and that is the heel to ball roll. To do that, you hold L1 or LB, and then you just flick the right stick in the way you are going, and then behind you, and you will do it. And it slightly changes your angle, but the thing that's really quite good about it is the way that it sort of seems to protect the ball from tackles. There's something about the angle and the way they move the ball that does make it quite hard to tackle. And the way that I tend to use it is make it look like you're going, say, to the defender's left, and then slightly change direction, pull out the heel to ball roll to go the other way, and you honestly will often just break the defender's ankles. I'd also give a shout out to the tip Nep gave about passing it to the top of the box and then passing it in from corners. I found that very effective, especially at the moment, because you have players who have pinged and tiki-taka, and also players in the box with like low driven and stuff. So it makes it pretty easy to get goals just by doing that. So that's been pretty good. On that, we'll take a break, and we'll be back to talk about, I'm not quite sure. It'll be a surprise right after this break. Hello, and in this break, a quick reminder that the pod is made possible by supporters. The pod didn't used to be weekly. Yes, Foot Weekly wasn't actually weekly for a time. And then someone suggested setting up the Patreon. And since then, the pod has been weekly. And in fact, it's been twice weekly because there is that supporter episode every single week. So if you'd like to catch that episode and keep the podcast going, it's just £3 a month to do so. And you get loads in return. And there are perks higher than that, including access to the Discord too. So if you're interested and would like to support the podcast, then head over and search Support for Weekly. Go to Patreon and it's very easy to sign up. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, then a huge thank you for doing so. And if you do consider supporting, a huge thank you too. Right, let's jump back into the pod.
Well, welcome back from the break. I'm clearly not Ben, but both in the break and on the content pod this week, which if you're a supporter of the Patreon, you'll have already listened to, obviously. Ben mentioned that he went 13-0. He bottled his final 2 games, but we won't dwell on that. So, what did you do to go 13-0 aside from get, really easy matchmaking?
Well, yeah, aside from EA deciding to let everyone into champs, which may have been a factor, but I did change tactic actually. And, while not the most beautiful of tactics that I've created, it was basically because I got the 𝘵𝑦𝘬𝘦 and the player pick, and then I was like, oh, I should give him a go. So I wanted to change to a 2-striker formation. So I went for the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow, which Josh, you've talked about before. I'll put the code in the description of the podcast. It's not anything particularly special, but I'll talk about some reasons why I think it worked well. It's just standard defense. The fullbacks are on fullback, but it's worth noting that I do trigger runs and move them manually in the attack, so they're not completely static. But I did try wing back, and I don't know, they're definitely actually wing back's okay, but yeah, attacking wing back even on one of them just doesn't really seem that great. So then went for a deep lying playmaker on defend, CDM, have this massive 6'8" 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦 with intercept. Actually only has intercept plus and tiki-taka plus, and obviously some base play styles, but he's just a waller. I mean, size at defensive midfield position is just really helpful. And then at either side of him, I've got 𝘬𝘯𝘰, who is Liga F Tina season, and then on the other side have 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝘐, of course, Serie A MVP 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝘐. And I think actually it was those two that really did make a big impact. Up front, I have Ronaldinho playing shadow striker. Actually doesn't have a plus or plus plus at all, but he just kind of floats around and that's totally fine. And then I have Vinny Jr. on advanced forward plus plus, but on support right striker. And then it's 𝘬𝘯𝘰𝘠, who has a higher GG rating than TaZz's Immortals Ronaldo, playing at left striker attack. And yeah, I think 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝘐 and 𝘬𝘯𝘰 really made quite a big difference. 𝘬𝘯's sort of playmaking ability, even though they're both on box to box, was really useful kind of between the lines. And then 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝘐 particularly seemed to make quite a lot of deeper runs. I guess that might have been because with Vinny ahead of 𝘬𝘯𝘰 on support, he was moving around a lot more. So 𝘬𝘯𝘰 was sort of a bit more restricted in terms of movement, whereas on the other side, Rutte was sort of being quite penetrative, and 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝘐 would kind of follow up behind and pick up, I think, a lot of goals over that time. And him having low driven plus, and the fact that with a Hawk, which I had him on, he's controlled lengthy, just meant he could kind of burst past even the likes of 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦, right, playing in the defensive midfield role. And so many of the goals I scored were sort of extra passes to him to finish off. And both 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝘐 and 𝘬𝘯𝘰 having the incisive pass plus was just really, really effective of finding the front three. And actually often meant that, especially because Rutte is so fast because he's controlled lengthy with quick step plus, my opponent just got really concerned about the runs that those attackers were making and the fact that I could find them all the time, that it meant that I was able to play some quite kind of fun stuff. Because they were so concerned about that, I could then feed Ronaldinho and kind of dribble at their defense with him, or maybe Vinny would drop off and I'd dribble at defense with him instead. So it maybe wasn't the most pretty display of attacking football, but there were times when it was quite nice. I actually have a clip, which I'll share in the Discord, of the technical dribble effort touch combination that I was talking about on the Gameplay podcast last week. And Vinny is particularly good at doing that. So yeah, that was how it's set up, and it was just generally quite a kind of smooth performance overall. And I think, the only thing I would kind of warn people about with this tactic, and I guess Josh, you would have experienced this, if an opponent is smart and they're leading, they will just use their fullbacks loads, and it really pulls out your defensive shape if you try and press them. And if you come up against a 4-1-2-1-2 narrow, identifying that and then using your fullbacks to progress the ball is something that is pretty infuriating to play against when you're playing this tactic. And I did actually switch a couple of times when my opponent was smart enough to, realize that that's a good way of building up against it. It also means you can actually be a bit more or much more attacking with your fullbacks. You could move them to wing back or attacking wing back if you come up against this tactic, because those players don't have, they still are helpful in terms of marking the strikers, but they're not as important defensively. It was good. DJ, is there a particular tactic that you've been using of late that you found good?
I have been using the 4-2-3-1. Sorry, the 4-2-3-1 wide. So with the wide midfielders, that's sort of been the one I keep going back to this year. That you obviously get the advantage of the two CDMs, but I play one of them. I've got like a 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘬𝘦 in build up, so he gets forward and into the midfield, and I use that 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘬𝘦 shadow striker. And whatever ridiculous price she is, how is that under 500,000 is completely beyond me. It's just the most fantastic cam I've used all year. Scores from everywhere. The incisives are fantastic. Can dribble 5-5, just bonkers. But the main difference, I suppose, in the way I play is I try and get the overlaps from the fullbacks all the time. So play the wide midfielders inside forwards. They are on balance, so they're not playing right up in the attacking line. They just drop in 3/4 between the midfield and the striker, and then I try and get the overlap in with Davis or Dumfries in behind him. And it's just keeping the concentration of knowing if you're playing someone that's going to hit in behind you all the time on those to be sparing when you're doing it. But most people can't deal with the overlap, so you can just keep creating a lot of space, stretching the defence, and either working round the back, but much more effective is to pull them out wide and then pass laterally across to the top of the box and then ping a pass first time straight into your striker. So that works really well for me, but constantly using that width to stretch the defences wide to find the space for the ping pass straight into attacker.
That sounds good. And Josh, did you move away from the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow?
No, it's still by far my favourite formation. I did start using a 4-3-3-2 that was posted by Alexian that has like fully attacking wing backs, and that was a lot of fun. I'm not sure I'd use it in a must-win game, but it was definitely a more fun way to play than kind of how most people would usually play. I just love the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow. I just find the ability to play nice passing football is so like high with that, especially for those kind of lock-on 1-2s that I was talking about. There's so many options for that all over the pitch. It can be susceptible to people attacking with their fullbacks, but no one does. So you're pretty safe. Everyone's playing fullback defense, so it's never really that much of an issue. And usually, if they do sprint forward with the fullback and you win the ball off them, like sometimes I'll just give them the ball. I'll be like, go on, you run forward with your fullback. I won't put any pressure on because you're not crossing it. I'm not worried about what their fullback's going to do most of the time. And then if they lose it, because I've got the two strikers and then I've got a shadow striker, I'm essentially 3-on-3. And if I play a ball to the side that the fullback has just progressed from, there's just acres and acres of space. And if you can trigger a run from the midfielder, you've now got a midfielder who's having to be tracked by the fullback, and your two strikers are now in with the centre backs, and then you've got the shadow striker who's running in between them. Like, it's very, very difficult to manage defensively. So, yeah, there's a kind of bit of brinkmanship that's needed, I think, to play that and allow people to progress to their fullbacks. It can be difficult to put pressure on. That's absolutely true. It's always good to have a 4-2-4 tactic just in the locker for if someone wants to start holding it in their back line. But yeah, it's my favourite formation. I do want to start trying other things. But I think because I play mostly with my Evo squad and they're all like central based players, like they're all so well rounded, it just feels silly not to play like that. I want to try a 4-2-3-1 at some point and, just go 3 shadow strikers and see what happens if, progress the ball incredibly quickly, try and counter-attack incredibly quickly. But yeah, no, I just think 4-2-2 narrow is the antidote to the 6-0-4 formations that you come up against all the time.
Yeah, it does work really well against the 4-2-1-3. And yeah, I think is a good tactic to at least have in your locker, I think, whether you're going to play as a primary tactic. TaZz, what about you? Any particular tactical changes recently?
I went back to the 4-2-1-3, but I'm not going to talk about that anymore. But I think, if you start playing it once again, you notice like how good it is. But I think like something similar like the 4-3-3 in the second variation, I think Josh just mentioned it, is also very good. And I think recently I also played the 4-2-2-2, which I feel like is also a nice formation. I still struggle a little bit with it, like how to maybe fill the void in the central position, in this cam position more or less, and experimented with like false 9 on one of the 2 strikers. But I think this is then at the end what's missing from this formation to a formation like the 4-2-1-3, for example. But I have one question for you, Ben. I'm very, very interested. Like when you were 13-0 in the 14th game, like were you nervous? Like when you went into the game?
I would say I was a bit. I guess I was fairly happy with 13 wins anyway, so I guess I didn't feel the reward pressure. I felt like getting to 15 wins would have been kind of ridiculous, and so I wasn't like imagining that would happen. So I wasn't like super nervous, but I do think it affected my performance in that final game. The fact that there was like, it felt like 14 wins would have been the highest I've ever got. So I think that was maybe playing on my mind a little bit. And actually, the opponent, it was quite clear quite quickly, was just extremely good. So I guess at that point I was like, actually, this isn't for me. I had to remind myself not to quit, because obviously then I wouldn't have got the objective. But it wasn't too bad. Do you have a bit of composure advice you were going to give, or were you just asking?
No, like first of all, I was interested because I noticed it still for myself. Like I have a little bit of competitive experience, but it's almost like, I don't know, 5 years plus, like in the past, or maybe 10 years even. And still now when I play, sometimes I have a good run in the weekend league. Like if it getting to the later games or like to the later stage, I noticed that I'm getting a bit nervous. So I was interested how you feel about it, because I find it so interesting that you, even though it's just a game and like you just play on your own, and it's just for your own, like, I don't know, proof of what you can do and what you can accomplish, you still put this kind of pressure on you. And I was interested how, like, because I think you have different types on how you deal with those kind of situations, but I just think it's something cool to talk about. And there are ways how you can be more composed, like breathing techniques to really like get rid of this kind of pressure, like pausing in those kind of situations when you notice it's going to take over, for example. Actually, we have a course on like an expert course. It just came up, and like one part of this is like how to stay composed, how to stay in this kind of zone, basically. And breathing techniques is something which I think is the most, like, the best technique and also easiest to apply to like really get rid of this kind of weird feeling that you feel you have to do something special, like that you're afraid of doing something wrong. And I think the approach that maybe I also got from your response in that case is try to play it's just a normal game, because as soon as you start thinking about it, like that this game has a special meaning to you, then you get afraid of, I might lose this, and then you start to play differently. And if you're just relaxed and keep your cool in that way, you will benefit from this. And I think this is something which might be something that a lot of people now can identify with, that is going to happen with them. And we have content on that as well to deal with it a little bit better.
Is the FUT Weekly exclusive discount still going?
Obviously, it's still going.
Still
yes.
going. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
What is it? 25%? What
It
was
was-
the code? FUT Weekly 25.
Exactly, FUT Weekly 25 for 25%, and right now we still have during the team of the season phase still like a reduced price on all our content.
So a double discount.
Exactly.
I'll put the little bit of information in the description to help people sign up to that, because I know people have been taking advantage of that whenever you come on. Actually, one more thing to add in terms of mentality, definitely, or maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more. I was thinking that actually I didn't think I felt as much pressure in that 14th game to try and get 14 wins as I did when, let's say, I've had a bit of a, I don't know, maybe less focused champs, and I'm looking at maybe getting a result that's lower than I would typically get if I didn't win the next game, which is my final game or something like that, almost that actually the feeling like I'm kind of in some way declining or something like that, and maybe it's an age thing, feels worse than, not quite making something that is a really big achievement, which I think is probably a more common thing, for sure.
It is interesting. It's a lot around those expectations we set in our own mind, because it's not like the rewards are guaranteed to be any better. Let's be completely honest, as we've seen. So it's not rewards really when you logic about it. It could be peer groups. You could be thinking, I want to make sure that everyone still sees me as this good a player. But you can always lie about that. But beyond that, it is all in our own heads, the pressure we create. It's quite weird, and it's quite interesting, and therefore I've been constantly trying to reframe it and just constantly say, well, it doesn't matter, it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't change anything. Let's just play each game as it goes, and try not to think about, well, this one means I've got to win the next two to get to this point. If I lose this, then I fall behind here, and you can get completely. I definitely found I could get stuck in my own head quite a lot, overthinking it, and just trying to put a level of realism on the whole thing of going, really, in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? And will it actually have an effect?
I think it's very true what you said, and I think there are two sides of it. Like, one side is now when we talk, for example, Ben is 13-0 in the weekend league and wants to potentially push for an even better result. Then this is kind of this, you want to achieve something and you might have this kind of pressure, but there's also the other side of it. Like, how do you play the game and just have fun? Like that you don't get angry about things that happen, like this kind of whole mindset and mentality approach. Like, we did a poll on our YouTube channel, like I think over a month ago. I have it right in front of me, and like 57% of the people voted that mentality is everything in the game. Like that you stay in a good mindset, that you don't get tilted and all that stuff. And still, I would say, like, how much like you will find content on how to abuse the most meta techniques, or how you get better at defending or attacking, etc. But how many people actually consume content around to have a better mentality, and not just about that you might be able to, for example, win the 14th and the 15th game in the weekend league, but also just playing the game, and that you are happy what you achieved, and that you don't get out of the weekend league or out of a rival session or whatever, out of the friendly cup to clear an objective, that you end up with a session and that you feel unfilled in a way, or that you are unhappy what just happened. And I think this is another component of just mentality and mindset, which I feel like, even though a lot of people agree, a lot of players agree, it is important that you achieve better results and also just have more fun playing the game. Not a lot of players are willing to actually deal with this kind of content to have more fun playing the game. And I think this is very important to just, like, it's just a game at the end, and it doesn't really matter if you accomplish like 5 wins or 8 wins or 11 wins. As I said, like, when it comes to rewards, it doesn't really matter that much. But I think what is important, that you make use of the time that you spent playing the time, and that you enjoy the time that you playing that game.
Yeah. That's such a good point. I mean, it is just a balance between enjoying the game and not over focusing or fixating on the results, but also, there is satisfaction to be gained from improving at the game and from getting better results as well. So it's all about kind of balancing those things. And I guess I probably kind of take that week by week, if you like. If I feel like I have time to kind of lock in a bit more in champs or something like that, then I'll try and really get a good result, which I did this weekend I was quite focused on it. Whereas other weeks I'll be like, oh, I'm just going to go in and see how things go. I'm not going to put any pressure on. I'm going to kind of play some fun football and treat it like that. So I think it can be something that varies for you, kind of session to session. Doesn't need to be a focus throughout the whole cycle, because that can actually be kind of quite a lot. Before we depart, any further things to add on this?
Well, I'm infamous for having a meltdown in the Discord, in our supporters Discord, for when I decide the game is terrible, it's the game's fault, and it hates me. But I actually know in all logic that 90% of the enjoyment comes from my state of mind and whether I'm enjoying it and going in with the right mindset. And then it's very easy to start blaming everything else when your mindset's wrong. And that it's not perfect. Let's be completely honest. Everything I say is completely valid, but it is what it is. You got to play the ball as it lies. It's the game we've got to play, and there isn't anything better there, or there is nothing we'd rather be doing with our time, otherwise we'd be doing it. So it's just to take about, definitely for me, taking more personal responsibility for the enjoyment.
I think there's also an element of, like, one of the things I think that's helped me is, and this is going to sound weird because I've not thought of like the exact way of phrasing it, but stop like humanizing your opponent. Don't see yourself necessarily like, because I think it's a weird game. We've spoken about it quite a bit recently, where it's a weird game that you're playing 1v1 for an extended period of time. And there's very few games that are like that. And so it can be quite easy to think your opponent's doing things to annoy you and to piss you off, or to like get in your head a little bit. Or even just get frustrated with the way they're playing. Stop thinking about that. Just see it as the game that you need to beat. Like, this is the opponent I'm up against. Like, you literally would not know if that was an AI control player or not. With how good computers are getting now at learning how to replicate our actions, like, playing squad battles is going to replicate playing online in the not too distant future. So if you can really stop doing that, you'll stop like winding yourself up by thinking that someone is getting one over on you. Because I think that's a lot of the mentality people have, is they start like kind of voicing what they think their opponent is doing instead of just like concentrating on, well, what do I need to do? You can get into this really like bad negative cycle with it.
The classic one is like they're using all their pauses to wind me up. They've probably just got an Amazon delivery, or their wife's just shouted at them because they haven't emptied the dishwasher.
Or their cleaner's arrived. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. Gotta let the cleaner in. But it is. We think the worst of it the whole time, when in fact it's just probably something human going on the other end a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, nice to have a little discussion on mentality, and we've had some mentality special episodes in the past, and it'd be nice to do one again. It's been a little while, so yeah. Anyway, it's been good to have this panel of guests. Taz, thank you very much for joining us as always. If you are listening and would like more of Taz, then you can check out the guide for loads of great guides on gameplay.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And just one last thing, we also have a course on mentality, who like a guy who had a degree in psychology created this course. I like the content, so if you're interested in that, check it out.
Yeah, just go to theguide.gg. And thank you very much as well, of course, to DJ. Nice to have you on.
Fantastic to have on. Taz, any chance you could extend that discount on Mindset to the Manchester United squad? That would be fantastic for us.
Yeah, if you have some context, let me know. I can maybe make something happen.
Thanks very much, Ben.
No, it's been a pleasure. And thank you very much as well to Josh. Good to have you on as always.
Yeah, been good to be here. I definitely think the United squad needs that mentality course, especially considering the big games we're playing this week in Malaysia. As if the squad weren't knackered enough from this season.
And then, of course, thank you very much to all you listeners tuning in. A reminder, you can subscribe via the various podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. If you're catching this on YouTube, do drop a like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It definitely helps. And I do read all the comments, and they may be used as questions for the pod. So yeah, drop them there. And if you would like an extra podcast every single week, then you could sign up as a supporter. You'll, of course, be supporting the podcast and keeping it going. It's just £3 a month. You can do that just by searching support for weekly. A huge thank you to all those supporters keeping the podcast going, including those icon patrons. Dave B, Darren W, Hugh J, Rob W, Brent P, Ralph, Josh R, Brian, Michael B, Adam R, Bertasaka, Make B, Michael H, Andrew P, Arian B, Rob S, Michael K, Neil P, Jake S, Tom B, Alex M, Alan G, Lee A, Chris G, Mark M, Dom P, Rob P, Roger D, Dan W, Waterman, Also Ran, and Juicy. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.